Emma wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stood in front of her grandmother's old cottage. The small house sat quietly at the end of a narrow lane in the English countryside, surrounded by tall oak trees that had watched over the property. For decades, she had been putting off this task for weeks. But now there was no choice. The cottage needed to be cleared out and sold. As a single mother, Emma barely had enough time to breathe. Her days started at 5 in the morning when she got James ready for school, then rushed to her job at Morrison's supermarket where she worked the checkout until 3. After picking up James, she would help him with homework, make dinner, and then head out again for her evening cleaning job at the office building in town. By the time she got home, she was exhausted. But the bills still needed to be paid. This weekend was different though. James was staying with his friend Tommy, which gave Emma 2 full days to sort through her grandmother's belongings. The old woman had lived in this cottage for over 50 years, and every room was filled with memories and dust-covered treasures. On the 3rd day, Emma decided to tackle the garden. Her grandmother had always been proud of her roses, but now they were wild and overgrown. Weeds had taken over the small flower beds, and the grass was knee-high. Emma pulled on her old gardening gloves and started clearing the area near the back door. James had come back that morning and was now sitting on the stone step, reading one of the books they had found in his great-grandmother's collection. He was a quiet boy, always happier with a book than playing outside with other children. Emma worried about him sometimes, since his father had left them 2 years ago. James had become even more withdrawn. As Emma worked her way round an old rose bush, her fingers hit something hard in the soil. She dug carefully with her hands, pulling away the dark earth until she could see what it was. A silver ring emerged from the ground, covered in dirt, but still shining despite its age. "Mum, what's that?" James asked, looking up from his book. With curious eyes, Emma held the ring up to the afternoon sunlight. "Just an old ring, love," she said, though she could see it was far from ordinary. The silver band was covered in strange engravings that seemed to move and dance in the light. The symbols looked ancient, unlike anything Emma had ever seen before. She brushed away more dirt with her thumb, trying to make sense of the markings. They were beautiful but mysterious, carved deep into the metal. As she turned the ring in different directions, the engravings seemed to catch the light in ways that made them appear almost alive. "It's pretty," James said, walking over to get a better look. "Do you think it belonged to great-grandma?" Emma smiled at her son. "I think it must have. She probably dropped it out here years ago while she was gardening." She slipped the ring into her pocket, planning to clean it properly when they got home. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly as they finished packing the last of the cottage's contents into boxes. Emma felt sad leaving the little house behind. It had been her refuge as a child when her parents were arguing, and her grandmother had always made her feel safe and loved. That evening, back in their small flat above the baker's shop in town, Emma sat at the kitchen table examining the ring under the bright overhead light. The strange symbols were even more intricate than she had first thought. She found herself tracing them with her finger, wondering what they might mean. Without really thinking about it, Emma slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made just for her. The moment it settled into place, she felt a warmth spread through her hand and up her arm. It was comforting, like being wrapped in a soft blanket on a cold night. She had been worrying about money again. Before they left the cottage, the rent was due next week, and James needed new school shoes. His old ones had holes in the soles, and she had been trying to make them last just a little longer. But somehow, with the ring on her finger, those worries seemed less overwhelming. That night, Emma had the most vivid dream she could remember. She found herself standing in her grandmother's garden, but it looked different. The roses were in full bloom, the grass was perfectly cut, and everything was bathed in golden sunlight. Her grandmother was there, but she looked young, probably about Emma's age. Her hair was dark instead of the silver-white Emma remembered, and she wore a simple blue dress that moved gently in the warm breeze. The ring finds its way to those who need hope most. Dear Emma. Her grandmother said with a smile that was exactly as Emma remembered it. Trust in yourself. You have more strength than you know. Emma wanted to ask her grandmother so many questions, but before she could speak, the dream began to fade. She woke slowly. The morning light streaming through her bedroom window, the ring was still on her finger, and it still felt warm against her skin. As Emma got ready for another long day, she found herself smiling for the first time in weeks. Something had changed, though she could not quite explain what it was. The first Monday after finding the ring, Emma arrived at Morrison's supermarket feeling unusually energetic. She had slept well for the first time in months, and even the grey October morning could not dampen her spirits. The ring sat comfortably on her finger, hidden beneath her work gloves as she began her shift at the checkout. Around midday, her manager Tom approached her during her break. Tom was a fair man in his 50s who had always been kind to Emma, but he rarely spoke to the staff unless there was a problem. Emma, could I have a word? He asked. Pulling up a chair in the small staff room, Emma's heart began to race. Had she done something wrong? Was she about to lose her job? With James depending on her, she could not afford any setbacks. I've been watching how you organize the stockroom, Tom continued, and Emma felt herself relax slightly. The way you arrange everything, how you keep track of what we need to order, it's really impressive. Emma blinked in surprise. She had always been careful with her work, but she had not realized anyone had noticed. I was wondering if you'd like some extra shifts helping with inventory management, Tom said. It would mean a few more hours each week, and a bit more money too. Emma felt the ring grow warm against her skin as she smiled and accepted the offer. It was not a huge change, but every extra pound would help with their tight budget. That evening, at her cleaning job, Emma found herself paying more attention to the office building's systems. When the security alarm kept malfunctioning, instead of just calling the maintenance company as usual, she spent some time looking at the control panel. She had always been good with puzzles, and after studying the system for a while, she figured out that one of the sensors needed adjusting. Henderson, the building owner, was so impressed when he learned what Emma had done that he offered her a small raise to handle basic building maintaining issues. It was only an extra £20 a week, but to Emma, it felt like winning the lottery. The changes were not just about work, though. Emma found herself noticing her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, struggling with her heavy shopping. Bags one afternoon, Mrs. Patterson was a widow in her 80s who lived alone in the flat next door. Emma had always said hello in passing, but they had never really talked. Let me help you with those, Emma offered, taking the bags without waiting for an answer. As they climbed the stairs together, Mrs. Patterson chatted about how difficult it was getting to the shops now that her arthritis was worse. Emma found herself offering to pick up groceries for her neighbor the next time she went shopping. You seem different lately, Mrs. Patterson said as they reached her door, more confident. Somehow, there's something brighter about you. Emma touched the ring through her pocket and smiled. She had been feeling different, though she could not quite explain why. The following week brought another test of Emma's changing confidence. She was working the afternoon shift when a middle-aged man began shouting at David. One of the younger cashiers. David was only 17 and had started working at the store just a month earlier. The customer was angry because David had accidentally double-scanned one of his items. "You stupid boy," the man yelled, his face red with anger. "Can't you do anything right? I want to speak to your manager immediately." David's hands were shaking as he tried to fix the mistake. And Emma could see tears forming in his eyes. Other customers in the queue were getting uncomfortable, and some were moving to different checkouts. Emma felt the ring grow hot against her skin. Before she knew what she was doing, she had stepped away from her own checkout and walked over to the angry customer. "Excuse me, sir," she said in a calm but firm voice. "I can see you're frustrated, but there's no need to speak to my colleague that way. He's trying his best to help you." The man turned his anger toward Emma. "Mind your own business. This has nothing to do with you." "Actually, it does," Emma replied, standing a little straighter. "We all work together here, and we treat each other with respect. David is learning, and mistakes happen. He'll sort out your bill. But I won't stand by and watch you bully a teenager." The man looked surprised that someone had stood up to him. He grumbled under his breath but stopped shouting. David managed to fix the problem, and the customer left without another word. "Thank you," David whispered to Emma as she returned to her checkout. "I didn't know what to do." Emma squeezed his shoulder gently. "You did fine. Don't let people like that upset you." The biggest change, however, was in James, her quiet, serious little boy began smiling more at home. He started telling Emma about his day at school instead of just saying fine when she asked. When Miss Roberts called one evening, Emma expected the usual concerns about James being too withdrawn. "I don't know what you're doing differently," Miss Roberts said, "but James seems so much happier lately. He's started joining in during group activities, and he even raised his hand to answer questions in math class yesterday. His reading has improved tremendously too." After hanging up the phone, and looked down at the ring on her finger. She was still doing the same things she had always done, working hard, caring for others, trying her best to be a good mother. But somehow she felt stronger, more capable of handling whatever came her way. The ring seemed to remind her that she had always had these qualities inside her. She just needed to remember to use them. 3 months had passed since Emma found the ring in her grandmother's garden. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm with her extra work hours and the small improvements that seemed to follow her. Everywhere she went, James was doing better. At school, and Emma felt more confident than she had in years. Then, on a cold Tuesday morning in January, everything changed. Emma was restocking shelves at the supermarket when she saw a familiar figure walking through the automatic doors. Her heart stopped. It was Michael, James's father, looking older but still the same man who had walked out on them 2 years ago without a word of explanation. He spotted her immediately and walked over with hesitant steps. Emma's hands began to shake as she continued ranging tins of beans, trying to look busy and avoid his eyes. "Hello, Emma," Michael said quietly. "Could we talk?" Emma felt the ring grow warm against her finger, but not in the comforting way she had grown used to. This time, it felt like a warning. She wanted to tell him to leave, to shout at him for abandoning his son, to make him feel the pain that James had carried for 2 years. "I don't think we have anything to talk about," Emma replied, still not looking at him. "Please," Michael said, "just give me 10 minutes. There's so much I need to explain." Against her better judgment, Emma agreed to meet him at the small cafe down the street during her lunch break. She sat across from the man she had once loved, the man who had promised to be there for her and James forever. Michael looked nervous as he stirred his coffee. He had lost weight, and there were dark circles under his eyes that had not been there before. "I know you hate me," he began, "and you have every right to. I left when you needed me most." "And I left James when he was just a little boy," Emma said. "Nothing. Waiting for him to continue. I've been getting help. Emma, I was struggling with depression. Really bad depression, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I thought leaving would be better for both of you than staying and being a terrible father and husband." The ring grew warmer, and Emma felt that familiar urge to respond with anger. She wanted to tell him that depression was not an excuse for abandoning his family, that she had struggled to but had never given up on James. Instead, she took a deep breath and listened. "I've got a new job now," Michael continued. "Nothing fancy, just warehouse work. But it's steady. I've been in therapy for 6 months, and I'm taking medication that helps. I want to make things right. Emma, I want to be the father James deserves." Emma studied his face, looking for signs that this was just another empty promise. She had heard him make promises before, about helping more with James, about finding steady work, about being the man she needed him to be. "James doesn't even remember you properly," Emma said finally. "You can't just walk back into his life and expect everything to be fine." "I know," Michael said. "I don't expect anything. But I'm asking for a chance to try." Over the following weeks, Emma made the difficult decision to give Michael supervised visits with James. She stayed nearby during their meetings at the local park, watching as her son cautiously got to know his father again. James was polite but distant, and Emma's heart ached seeing how carefully her little boy guarded his emotions. When Michael mentioned that his warehouse job had ended and he was struggling to find new work, Emma surprised herself by helping him. She spoke to Tom at the supermarket, and he agreed to give Michael a part-time position in the stockroom. "You didn't have to do that," Michael said when she told him about the job. "I did it for James," Emma replied firmly. "If you're going to be in his life, you need to be reliable." For a few weeks, things seemed to be improving slowly. James began to warm up to his father, and Michael appeared to be keeping his promises. Emma allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, James would finally have the father he deserved. Then everything fell apart. James came home from school one Friday with a slight cough. By Saturday morning, he was burning with fever and struggling to breathe. Emma rushed him to the hospital, where doctors diagnosed him with pneumonia and admitted him immediately. Daughters Emma sat in the sterile hospital room, watching her 7-year-old son fight for each breath through an oxygen mask. She felt more alone and helpless than ever before. The machines beeped constantly, monitoring James's vital signs, and Emma had not slept in 2 days. Michael had visited once, bringing flowers and promises to stay. But he had left after an hour when James barely acknowledged his presence. Emma understood that hospitals made some people uncomfortable, but she needed someone to lean on, someone to share the weight of this terrifying experience. She looked down at the ring on her finger, the ring that had seemed to bring so many positive changes to her life. Now, when she needed hope most, it felt cold and lifeless against her skin. "What good are you now?" Emma whispered to the ring, tears streaming down her face as she held James's small hand in hers. "You were supposed to help us. You were supposed to make things better." But the ring remained silent and cold, and Emma had never felt so alone in her life. Emma had not left the hospital in 3 days. She moved between James's room and the family waiting area, catching brief moments of sleep in uncomfortable plastic chairs. Her son's condition was slowly improving, but the doctors said he would need to stay for at least another week. On Thursday morning, Emma sat in the waiting room with a cup of terrible coffee, trying to stay awake. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sounds of hospital life. She twisted the ring on her finger, still feeling disappointed that it had not somehow protected James from getting sick. An elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes entered the waiting room, moving slowly with the help of a walking stick. She looked tired and worried, carrying a small bag and a thermos. Emma recognized the look on her face. It was the same expression she saw in the mirror every morning. The woman sat down in the chair across from Emma with a soft sigh. She glanced over and gave Emma a gentle smile. "Long night?" the woman asked quietly. Emma nodded. "My son has pneumonia. He's 7. I'm Emma." "I'm Rose," the woman replied. "My grandson Billy is here too. He's 8 and had his appendix out yesterday. Surgery went well. But you know how it is. You worry anyway." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two mothers united in their concern for the children they loved. Rose pulled out her thermos and poured herself tea from a china cup she had brought from home. "Would you like some?" Rose offered. "It's much better than the coffee here." Emma accepted gratefully. The tea was warm and soothing, flavored with honey and something she could not identify. "Chamomile and lavender," Rose explained, seeing Emma's questioning look. "My mother's recipe." Always helped calm the nerves. As Emma lifted the cup to her lips, Rose's eyes suddenly grew wide. She was staring at Emma's left hand with an expression of complete surprise. "That ring," Rose said, her voice barely above a whisper. "May I see it?" Emma looked down at the silver band on her finger, confused by Rose's reaction. "It's just an old ring I found in my grandmother's garden. Please," Rose said, leaning forward. "Could you take it off for just a moment?" Puzzled, Emma slipped the ring off her finger and handed it to Rose. The elderly woman held it up to the light, examining the strange engravings with trembling fingers. Tears began to form in her eyes. "I had a ring just like this once," Rose said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "Exactly like this. My mother gave it to me when I was about your age, struggling to raise my children alone after the war." Emma felt her heart skip a beat. "Are you saying this ring belonged to you?" Rose smiled through her tears. "Not this exact one, but one identical to it. These engravings, this silver work, I remember every detail." She traced the symbols with her finger just as Emma had done so many times. "My mother told me it had been in our family for generations, passed down to women who faced difficult times." "What happened to your ring?" Emma asked, fascinated despite her exhaustion. "I gave it away," Rose said simply. "About 20 years ago. I met a young mother at a bus stop. She was crying, holding a baby, with nowhere to go. Her husband had left her, and she had no family to help. I took the ring off my finger and gave it to her, just as my mother had given it to me when I needed hope most." Emma stared at Rose in amazement. "But I thought it was magic," she said, feeling confused and disappointed. "I thought it was supposed to protect us, to keep bad things from happening." Rose handed the ring back to Emma with a gentle smile. "In a way, it is magic, dear, but not the kind you might expect. The ring doesn't give you power that you didn't already have. It reminds you of the power you already carry inside." She pointed to the strange engravings that had fascinated Emma since the day she found the ring. "My grandmother told me these words mean strength through service in an old language. The ring helps you remember something important, that when you help others, you help yourself too." Emma slipped the ring back onto her finger, thinking about Rose's words. "Tell me about the changes in your life since you found it," Rose said. Emma found herself talking about the extra work hours, standing up to the rude customer, helping Mrs. Patterson with the shopping, even giving Michael a second chance. As she spoke, she began to realize something important. Every good thing that happened came from something I did. Emma said slowly, my own actions, my own choices, exactly. Rose said with satisfaction, the ring didn't create kindness in you, or courage, or the ability to work hard. Those qualities were already there. It just reminded you to use them. Emma looked down at the ring, understanding flooding through her. When she had helped David at work, the ring had grown warm. When she had chosen kindness over anger with Michael, she had felt its comfort. The ring had not been creating magic. It had been celebrating the magic that was already inside her. But James still got sick. Emma said, the ring didn't protect him. Rose reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. The ring's power isn't in preventing bad things from happening. Love, its power is in helping you find the strength to handle whatever comes your way. 2 weeks after meeting Rose in the hospital waiting room, James was finally well enough to come home. Emma had learned so much during those difficult days about speaking up for her son. She asked the doctors questions when she did not understand something. She made sure James got the medicine he needed on time. She even convinced them to let her stay overnight in his room when the nurses said it was not usually allowed. The confidence that had been growing inside her for months became even stronger. Emma realized that advocating for James had felt natural, like something she had always known how to do but had forgotten. Michael had visited James every day during his recovery, bringing books and small toys. He sat quietly by the bed, reading stories or just holding James's hand. Emma could see that he was genuinely trying to be the father James needed, even though it was still awkward between them. With James getting better and Michael now helping with childcare twice a week, Emma found herself with a little more time to think about other things. She remembered her conversation with Rose about helping others, and an idea began to form in her mind. The community center in their neighborhood had a small meeting room. It was often empty in the evenings. Emma spoke to the manager, Mrs. Gibson, about starting a support group for single parents. Mrs. Gibson thought it was a wonderful idea and offered the room for free. Emma put up notices round town, at the supermarket, the library, the doctor's office, and the school. She called her group Circle of Hope and scheduled the first meeting for a Thursday evening. Only 3 people came to that first meeting. Emma, a man named Robert whose wife had died the year before, and a woman called Helen who was raising 2 teenagers on her own. They sat in a circle and talked about their struggles, their fears, and the small victories that kept them going. Word spread slowly, and each week a few more people joined the group. They shared practical advice about managing money, dealing with difficult children, and finding time for themselves. But mostly, they just listened to each other and offered support when someone was having a particularly hard week. 3 months after starting the group, a young woman named Lucy came to a meeting. She looked to be about 22, with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and exhaustion written across her face. She carried a baby girl who could not have been more than 6 months old. Lucy sat quietly through most of the meeting, just listening as others shared their stories. When it was her turn to speak, she shook her head and whispered that she was just there to listen tonight. After the meeting ended, Emma noticed Lucy sitting in her car in the parking lot, not starting the engine. Emma tapped gently on the window. "Are you all right, love?" Emma asked as Lucy rolled down the window. Lucy looked up at Emma with eyes full of tears. "I don't think I can do this," she said, her voice breaking. Everyone in there seemed so strong, so capable. "I can barely get through each day. I'm not strong enough to be a mother." Emma's heart ached for this young woman who reminded her so much of herself just months earlier. She remembered sitting in her own kitchen, worried about paying the rent and buying James new shoes, feeling completely overwhelmed by life. "What's your little girl's name?" Emma asked, looking at the sleeping baby in Lucy's arms. "Sophie," Lucy replied. "She's beautiful, but I have no idea what I'm doing. Her father left when I told him I was pregnant. My parents live in Scotland and can't help much. I'm working part-time at a call centre. But the childcare costs almost as much as I earn." Emma opened the car door and sat on the passenger seat. "Lucy, can I tell you something? 6 months ago, I felt exactly like you do right now. I was working 2 jobs, struggling to pay bills, and felt like I was failing my son every single day." Lucy looked at Emma with surprise. "But you seem so confident, so together." Emma smiled and looked down at the ring on her finger, the ring that had reminded her of her own strength when she had forgotten it existed. She thought about Rose's words, about how the ring had been passed down to women who needed hope most. Slowly, Emma slipped the ring off her finger. It felt strange after wearing it for so long, but also right somehow. "This belonged to my grandmother," Emma said, placing the ring gently in Lucy's free hand. "It helped me remember something important during my darkest days, that we're all stronger than we think we are. You don't feel strong right now, but you are. You're here, asking for help, trying to do right by your daughter. That takes enormous courage." Lucy stared at the ring, turning it over in her palm. "I couldn't take this. It must be valuable to you." "It is valuable," Emma said, "but its value isn't in the silver or the engravings. Its value is in reminding you that you have everything you need inside you already. Wear it until you remember that about yourself." As Emma walked back toward the community center where James was playing on the small playground with some other children from the group, she felt something unexpected. The same warmth she had always felt when wearing the ring was still there, but now it came from inside her heart rather than from a piece of jewelry. She had learned that true magic was not about ancient rings or mysterious powers. True magic was in the choice to keep going when things got difficult, to help others when you could, and to believe in the strength that lives within everyone. "Ready to go home, Mum?" James called out as he ran toward her. "Ready," Emma said, taking his hand. She no longer needed the ring to feel strong. The real treasure had been inside her all along.